really excited to be here. And first, I want to thank our hosts, Taylor Wessing and Joseph and Leanne and Danielle and Hannah and the whole team. And you've been amazing to work with. This has been months in the making, and it's really great to see it happen. Today, we're going to touch on the metaverse from different angles, right? So you've heard from Hamza and McKinsey, sort of like brands are interested in this. They're experimenting with this. They want to try different experiences. It can affect different industries. But we really are at the very beginning of what we define as the metaverse or the future of the metaverse. So we're in what I would call the experimentation process. So what I'd like to cut across with our panel is really like some live examples from your experience. But before we jump in, why don't we start with quick intros? If you can say your name, where you're from, what do you do? Sort of like tweet bio plus version.
Sure, I'm Lorne Sugarman, CEO of the Metaverse Group. We're a Web3 technology company that is really bringing brands into life using metaverses or NFTs or technologies like that. We have a Web3 agency group that helps and consults with them in determining the right ways to do it. We have our own land. We own 950 parcels in predominantly Web3 metaverses, or only Web3 metaverses. And we have a gaming studio that builds out those experiences for the brands, and we're building our own proprietary technology for our view of the next version of e-commerce.
Thank you. Esther.
I'm the founder CEO of Hundo, and we're the world's first learn and earn campus, virtual campus for Gen Z to upskill for the future of work in Web3, Metaverse and frontier tech.
Amazing.
So hi, I'm Leanne, Elliott-Young, CEO and co-founder of IODF, which is the Institute of Digital Fashion. We birthed IODF as an emblem for change to really think about how we can work through some of the pain points that exist in fashion currently. So we have 6 industry world first, and a viewpoint is to make the metaverse futures much more inclusive, sustainable and diverse.
Awesome. We'll double click on that in a second. I'm Easy, like Sunday morning. I'm one of the co-founders and managing partner of Remagine Ventures. We're a seed and pre-seed fund investing in gaming, metaverse, Web3 infrastructure, and consumer tech. So as we talk about sort of like the metaverse, and it means so many different things to different people, perhaps you can give us an example each of what's the metaverse for you, and like what have you sort of like tried so far that you can share?
Metaverse is really any immersive 3D experience. So it can be a Roblox example, it can be a Decentraland example, it can be, so it doesn't matter to us. We've done a lot of work in Decentraland and other metaverses. Probably the thing that is the funnest that I'll share that people typically get excited about is we were Metaverse Fashion Week was on 169 parcels of our land in Decentraland. We ran the Forever 21 store. We built the Forever 21 store. We had at peak 3,000 people in the store, which we had some tricks on how we dealt with the server issues because there's infrastructure issues with that. We had, on average, users came and spent about 27 plus minutes in the store, so a very sticky experience. Someone made the comment about tracking about the number of time people come back. So 25% of our users came back 5+ times. We did track that data. And we held a live stream DJ show into our store, which we had 1,000 people come to watch. Really, I wish I had the videos today, because really what I'm telling you doesn't mean anything without those videos, but gives you an example of some of the stuff that we've done.
Awesome. Esther.
So we're actually launching next week. Exactly a week today with CareerCon, which is an on-demand content stream for people to discover the future of learning and work, whether parents, educators, young people. We've chosen a very Web 2 experience because, like with most things, it's simply too early for people to be. We're going for mainstream mass adoption, to kind of tackle youth unemployment as a result of the chronic and growing skills divide that's occurring, which Web3 Metaverse offers a challenge but also a route through. We go live next week. Ask me this time next week.
Oh, wow. Good luck.
Congratulations on that. That's amazing. Yeah, so what Metaverse projects have we delivered? Well, we've got these 6 industry world first. So we have straddled lots of different propositions of effectively what the metaverse is. So it's great to hear of like what it's not and what it possibly could be, and the fact that there's a real endless spectrum of what the metaverse means. And we are all there building it together, which I think is fundamentally so empowering, is that we all have the opportunity to be a part of this new future. So we have delivered on the red carpet for the Fashion Awards a meta garment. So that meant that those that attended the red carpet could also be dressed in a garment that we created digitally through augmented reality. That was then also created almost like a CGI mapped onto the photograph that was then put in every Vogue that there is on the planet. So global Condé Nast. And that is a touch of what the metaverse is, those real life interactions, the physical opportunities as well as what that means within the fashion industry. And I think it straddles lots of different perspectives, but avatars as well is something which, an identity is something which is so important to the metaverse, and what our physical and digital identities, how they work together and how we are represented in that space. We actually delivered a white paper to really drill into the importance of representation in the metaverse. But the metaverse is so many things. That's why it gets me so excited, because I feel like we could just go on and on and on drilling into that.
It's interesting because Epic Games and Fortnite made $4 to $5 billion in 2021 selling skins, which is like virtual clothing for the players' avatars. And people struggle to understand why would people buy virtual clothing for $5 billion? But when you spend a lot of your spare time socially in this virtual world, you start caring about how you look, and you don't want to, look like a default character. You want to personalize it. Especially Gen Z, everyone brings their own personality to the table, and they want to show it. So I think that's we'll touch on that. I want to quickly make a segue into brands, because a lot of what you guys do also involves bringing these brands that are coming from the, let's call it like non-metaverse environment. And I'm interested in your opinion, or what you've seen. Are brands developing a strategy for the metaverse? Are they dipping their toe? Is this like just marketing for them, or is there more here?
Why don't you go first?
Yeah, so I think there's some pain points in that as well. Like what we've found is, and we've got a very full inbox right now from Caring, LVMH, PVH, and working with emerging brands. So predominantly we work within fashion, because we're the Institute of Digital Fashion. The name, says it all it is. And we've found that the pain point is not listening to the experts. There's lots of data, but as we've just discovered, the metaverse isn't tangible yet as to what it specifically is. So when it comes to what brands are delivering, there's so many different different propositions of what it is and what we've been seeing delivered. And the exciting proposition is the fact that you can really wrap and extend your brand narrative. But the problem is the one-to-one conversations and the transparency. You have to have a brand voice in the metaverse. And if you're a large brand, what is that voice? What does that voice sound like specifically? Because normally you're used to speaking to multiple demographics. So there is a really interesting shift as to how brands position themselves and how they create narratives. But storytelling is something that is super exciting. And what we've seen many brands really jump into 2 feet first is how they can really tell a story beyond the physical pages of a magazine, or just the very stagnant, now you think about catwalk show with the little turn at the end, you could fly, there's these wonderful and endless propositions.
Okay, that's awesome. I want to hear more about that, but I'm curious, in your case, you're launching a world for Gen Z, Esther, and there's a lot of social impact involved here. I'm assuming you really are required, or you need those brands to come in to help you monetize and get exposure to these Gen Z youngsters that are looking for their next jobs or looking to get educated on the platform. What's your value proposition for them, and what have you encountered so far?
So I think it's interesting because we, World Economic Forum stat, there's 1 billion new tech roles needed by 2030, which is 7 years from now. And there's about, just shy of 300 million young people unemployed worldwide today. Frontier Tech is actually creating a huge swathe of very rapid job losses, particularly, because of AI, ML, automation, and robotics. So what we see is, where McKinsey report talks about 95% of executives, and that the metaverse should be seen as growth. It's simply not possible for people and companies to realise this future if they don't have an upskilled workforce. Gen Z makes up about 37% of the workforce today. It's already kind of the dominant, and is going to continue to rise. And then obviously you're thinking about Gen A, 5-year-olds today, beyond that. So for us, it's more of, we think about brands, they're also employers. Major employers. In many cases, employers themselves are employer brands, and it's kind of going, unless you are actually, so-called kind of cool brand, it's incredibly difficult to actually reach this audience. And there is, for us, it's kind of going, fundamentally, the global education to employment journey is structurally and systemically dysfunctional and breaking in many cases. So it's how do you create a rapid, agile, liquid learning format that can augment a young person's journey and ensure that they can transition safely and successfully into employment in the round. It's not all just about, I love it. I love avatars, and I love all the fun stuff. But it's kind of legal, crypto, asset managers, digital asset managers. These are all space tech, agri-tech. It's kind of going at pretty much every single vertical. We look at the future of learning. Essentially, how we all live, work, learn, and earn over the next century is being fundamentally disrupted now. So it's what does that future look like?
And has it been difficult for you to bring these brands on the platform? You haven't launched yet, but I'm assuming there's a few brands. I'm assuming here in the audience and companies. What are you looking for, and what's the value proposition for them?
So for us, we start, very much with building a Gen Z community, and then we build employer community on the other side. So in simple terms, give you an absolute example, we have the Stickmen coming to CareerCon. For those that don't know who the Stickmen are, they're part of Warner, and they have 7 million followers on TikTok, and they don't speak actually, so it's quite challenging trying to get them to do a panel with a robotic voice. So that's but then from there you go, okay, so that gives you exposure. Young people can kind of discover the future of learning and work in that way, and then you start to think about courses, masterclasses from creators. So we have like Dodds, who's an AR/VR visionary, Crystal Lake, Forbes 30 under 30, TikTok influencer in the employment space, and then for brands, it's kind of brands, employers, it's kind of going build academies, incubators with us, so that you can kind of rebuild this broken link. So there's kind of a 3-stage process where brands can get involved.
Cool. And I guess people don't realize, but if you're suffering from disabilities, or if you suffer from autism, the metaverse and gaming as a whole can be a huge, sort of like leveling the playing field for you to way for you to socialize and compete on the same level, and in many cases also win. So I think that there's a social impact side of it that people don't realize. But Lorne, you already sort of like are buying, renting, managing virtual real estate in virtual worlds, and already dipped your toes with a lot of brands. Can you give us sort of like an example and like how they think about strategy as well?
The brands today have varied. In the early days, call it, of this, it was just all about PR, and that was the KPIs we were using to really, share with the brands back. The evolution in a very short period of time has been much more, a much deeper thought process in what they're looking for and what they're trying to create. So, to your earlier question, it's not about, a 3-month process. It's about a span of 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. What are we trying to create? How are we trying to engage with, whether it's a consumer, engage with employees? It matters. It goes across the spectrum. And so when you look at our client base, for example, we have fashion brands and many fashion brands, but we also have accounting firms, we have law firms, we have large banks, et cetera. And they're all looking to achieve different things with their, call it metaverse experiences or virtual worlds experiences, as we learned the definition earlier today. And so, those types of experiences can be, for example, I'll choose a large financial services business. So they're building a future, and I was sharing this earlier today, they're building a future location in 2026, I think it launches. And so they want to be able to, their clients as well as their employees, to be able to share in this experience. And so you can build token-gated experiences where employees are able to go and see certain things. So they're going to have a large museum in this new building that they're building. So see the artwork, and maybe you create NFTs out of this artwork. They want their clients to be able to get live stream events from very specific token-gated events because they're their clients, and there's unique speakers that are coming and those types of things. And so you can create some really interesting things if you take a long-term view of what I'm trying to create and make it very sticky so that it's engaging and more immersive, and therefore I'm going to go and do it. And especially if we're sitting here today, I'm from Toronto, Canada. I had to get on a plane to get here to come and chat with you all. It would be much nicer in many circumstances where I could watch this, sit at home. I know we're videotaping it, but in a much more immersive experience where it's live stream and I can get the content that I need even without coming to these events. So those are the types of things that we're seeing and moving towards with the brands that we're working with. Much deeper, much different thoughts on engagement than when we first started, which was all about PR.
That's really interesting. And just if I extract some of the stuff you said, the motivations of the brands are PR, engaging with customers, and in some cases also making money because it's a real opportunity for them. You probably have a million examples of like brands that have made it work in the metaverse. I'd love to hear some of them, but like famously, Nike made like $30-something million. Sell it more, like 50.
Way more.
Yeah.
Way more. 130 million.
130 million. And then you have Adidas, who's sold out in like 15 minutes from like 25 million, selling NFTs of virtual avatars. How long does it take them to sell 25 million in shoes? And I'm wearing Adidas today. And I'm just curious, like sort of like what worked and what hasn't worked, and give us some.
I think that's a really good example. Just having those like hard points, and what you were saying about PR. PR has always been a really stiff KPI, and we've found that if you work the PR and marketing teams, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, and actually you have to go to C-suite because the opportunity is about an economic shift, but also a shift in the business model. So everything that you have to deliver, it has to have a legacy point and not just be about this one gimmick. And I think that lots of things that haven't worked are PR moments that are gimmick-led, and they haven't had the right team to wrap around it. So, what is Discord? Why is it important? Make sure you have some of your individuals within your business structure to be able to talk to the people, your real customers in real time. And I think why Artifact and Nike work so well, and the collaborations you were talking about, is because of integrity. You have brands that we're working with and partnering with people that have the vocabulary and the following and the community from the metaverse, within the metaverse, that they speak the language. So effectively they brought their community and they were educating the Nike community and audiences into crypto, blockchain, metaverse, the importance of this asset, what it means, what you can do with it. And so those partnerships and positionings, I think, are really important. And that's why I think partnerships in this space is so amazing, because it means that you have two audiences. And I think the tech and the fashion spheres are like oil and water. They don't really mix that well. But if you do a partnership in the right way, it means that you can bring new audiences together and it's educational. So I think the power of those was actually, the partnerships within it.
I agree, and I think that the brands that are doing it right are thinking about community first and foremost, rather than jump into the water. Last question from me before I open it to questions from the audience, and I'm sure some of you already have some great questions, so be ready to raise your hand. But what do you think is the iPhone moment that is required for this metaverse thing to work? Because we read about Mark Zuckerberg, and he's spending on the metaverse with very little to show for. And then we know that Fortnite was 10 years in the making, Roblox 15 years in the making. So how far are we from this actually becoming sort of like fully distributed? And what do you think needs to happen in order to increase the participation in the metaverse?
My observation of it is really what you're looking at the moment, I'd sort of describe it, is kind of like dial-up internet.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem is the sort of the UX UI experience at the moment. Until the iPhone is a good example. I think it was 2007 when they said, what we're going to have is a stylus, and it's like actually no, we've got a thumb, and it's kind of, and I think it has to get to that place. So I think there's been kind of a glut of sort of excitement, the sort of NFT mania, and all of that, and then inevitably there's a kind of a break, that kind of all sort of falls away, and you start to see some of the real build that's coming through. But fundamentally, for me, as someone who is new to the space, like most people, expert since yesterday, it's really about going until your crypto wallet is as secure as and as easy to use as your mobile banking app. It's going to be incredibly difficult to get mainstream adoption, and that's going to be incredibly difficult to then battle against the clickbait press that comes from wallets being drained, all these issues. So for me, that's where I really think that it needs to get to, so that people can actually feel safe, secure, and confident, rather than sort of slightly nervous and not really sure what it's all about.
Yeah, you need a mini PhD today to buy Ethereum, install a wallet, remember your safe password. Where are my NFTs? All right, I'm going to open it to the audience. If you have a question, raise your hand. Yep.
I was very interested in Metaverse Fashion Week, and we're meeting here in a law firm. And I wondered the extent to which you'd considered things like the absence of terms of service. So this is very traditional old Web 2 questions, but the brands that I work with are concerned about IP protections or terms of service. So you built out the Fashion Week on your land. So did you consider what would happen if Decentraland stopped working for a while? I know that sounds unlikely, but you have people who are contracting with you.
So, fair question. Early days, as you know, and no, some of those precautions, were not taken. There were obviously contracts that we signed, traditional Web 2, as you refer to them, contracts that we signed with the brands that we had. One of the things we didn't consider is, IP outage or whatever, moments like that. Obviously, we're insured, and there are other elements that we've done in a traditional business manner to protect ourselves and to protect our clients. But, I'm sure there are things that you've considered from a legal framework that I have not considered.
Hi. All the things I've sort of read and heard about are always extremely visual, which is kind of the big point. How does this work for disability access and people with bad eyesight or are fully blind? Where are the screen readers for this?
Yeah, it's a great question. So our director of learning has Sen Senko DHSP qualifications. There is, we don't see the kind of walking around in classrooms with headsets as the future of learning, and I think that's really important to say. I think to your point earlier, however, if you have students with autism, they can have incredible careers in cybersecurity. So I think it's that there is not, we kind of bundle Gen Z, into this sort of one bracket. We think about 16 to 24-year-olds, and we think my background is working with young people with special educational needs, deaf. Whole range. So for me, it's something that we're incredibly alive to. The protections that go with that. It's why we start with 16 plus, even though theoretically should be working with young people, with children much younger. It's kind of there is a whole load of child protection that needs to go in. And what I would say is I think Web 3. Also the Metaverse, I kind of sit in Web3 space thinking about the fundamental technology that underpins all of this and the roles, the sheer volume and breadth of roles that are available from project managers to illustrators, so we look at it in the round, but you're absolutely right. It's one of Web 2's biggest failings, actually. I spent a lot of time working in teenage self-harm, young male suicide prevention, and there is a direct correlation between social media platforms and the rise of both of those things. So I think it is actually, it's very good to be, that there is a room full of people who are interested in the safeties, the precautions and the measurements, because I think, unfortunately, that's been massively lacking in the very, very early stages of Web 2. And, of course, those centralised platforms were then able to explode with so little protection for young people.
Awesome. Please.
I'm quite interested about the accessibility of Web3, because I really agree with the fact that we have to teach the young people, like Gen Z, to access it and to work and to develop it. But at the moment, it's not accessible because I can't afford an NFT. So how do you access the world if you don't have the funds to access it at the moment, to then develop it, to apply for a generation that doesn't know what it is because they can't get into it? How does that work? And
I was going to say the opportunity as well is to be able to create an NFT for yourself, to create your own, business from that. So we think about yourself as somebody who's a buyer, but what about being a seller? And the opportunity is actually lots of the models are open source, so which you can create. I don't know if you heard about Snoop Dogg, the music video. Then everyone who watched the music video could then have a free model, an asset, which you can then manipulate, rebuild yourself and sell. That sounds like something that's very complicated, but if you twiddle around with it enough, like TikTok was quite complicated when I first started, but now I kind of know how to do it. And lots of the softwares are easy enough for you to jump into. So I think that's the positioning piece that's missing. And then as a business model, you as a platform and a brand also owning a part of an equity share of that resell. So I think the business model is it has this vision of it being decentralized and much more democratic in the way that we're not talking about the hierarchical structure that big named brands now work within. There was an opportunity for you to resell, for the brand to be a part of that equity, and also you yourself as the creator.
I love that angle, and I may want to add, the creator economy is something that is really growing. There's 200 million people that consider themselves creators today, and the tools for content creation, distribution, and monetization are growing exponentially right now, especially with generative AI and so forth. And imagine that not only you won't need to buy, you'll be able to sell, or you'll be able to trade, or you'll be able to earn this currency or virtual currency in this new world. And I think we'll touch a little bit on it in the gaming panel. But the idea is that you will be rewarded for your time versus sort of what we have today, which is basically paying for the entertainment or being the product yourself.
Yeah, but I think coming from a lawyer, it's quite hard to engage in that space because there are no regulations, there are no laws. So when you do work as a creator, you end up giving up all of your IP to the brand that's paying you to create it for them. So it's a bit of a loop. And I get there's no answer, right? But I think it's really important for us, because we are creating the metaverse and it is being created by us, create it for those people, for everyone, essentially. Inclusivity is as important in accessing it as it is in making it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hundo is free for under 25s, and it is a Web 2 interface. There's no point, 16-year-old in Newcastle can't afford a £1,400 headset. And I think that's the important thing to separate out from this. So we're about, discover what it can look like. We've taken a young black illustrator. He's created an NFT collection, which is minted on Polygon, on Ethereum. It's going into spatial with Kadeen James, which is one of the biggest galleries in the world. He owns his work. And anything that he receives in terms of sales are his. So I think there are, that's kind of an example in real time of how that works. But your point is absolutely correct. It's got to be affordable, at the point of entry, and then kind of more immersive spaces. That's a different thing.
Lorne, you had something to add?
I think it's been well covered. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's going back to the theme is you can do it yourself. It doesn't have to be under a brand identity or anything else where you can actually create your own thing. There's even a tool called Coco NFT that lies on Instagram that effectively allows anyone on Instagram to create their own NFTs and mint them themselves. Right? There's no cost to that. That's your own stuff that you've created on Instagram, which kind of takes it off platform and allows you to be a creator. So there's more and more technology like that that's happening every day.
But I think it's a very good point, and it's a great note to end on, which we are striving, we are all building the metaverse and investing, practicing, working with brands, doing it ourselves, and we need to think about it as an inclusive, open space as much as possible. So thank you for that wonderful finish, and I'd like to invite you all to thank the panel first.